super excited to kick off this kind of 4-part series for you guys as we enter the summer market. We're in the height of the spring market. I hope for a lot of you guys, right, the inventory's picked up, business is picked up, things seem to be getting crazy and busy again. So this is all good signs for what's to come in 2024. And lighter than our lawsuit, right? A lot of this is good stuff to know regardless, right? We don't know exactly how things are going to shake out with the settlement in July, August, September. And so I don't want you to think that we're doing this because it's a reaction to the settlement, right? Business practices are going to change a little bit, but all of this stuff is good to know regardless. And so we're going to kick off the first week with creating your buyer presentation. How many of you guys have a listing presentation that you designed, you put together? When a seller calls you and says, hey, I need to sell my house, you probably know exactly what to do, right? I would argue that a lot of us don't have the same thing on the buyer side. A buyer calls and goes, I want to buy a house. I need to go look at 123 Main Street. You jump in your car, you meet him in the driveway, you show him the house, and you might write him an offer. Right? There's a lot less of asking to earn their business on the buyer side. But if the settlement shakes out how we think it's going to, and buyers are going to have to sign a buyer agency with you prior to looking at houses, buyers are going to be more selective of who they choose to work with. Right? If they understand, I have to sign a legally binding contract to work with an agent, much like a seller does to sell their house, right? Buyers are going to want to know that their needs and their wants are represented by you as their agent. And so creating a buyer presentation is going to be critical to earning more buyer business. And so we're going to talk through today. This is just going to be kind of a step-by-step, right? Here are some things that you should put into your buyer presentation. Again, just take off your seller or your listing presentation hat and put on your buyer hat. And it's a really, really similar process. We're going to wrap up today's session. I'll show you a couple examples of different buyer presentations that you can take when you sit down and meet with buyers. But I am fully transparent. I am not the best buyer's agent in this room or in this company. And so I'm not going to sit up here and tell you this is exactly how you have to do it. This is what you need to put into your presentation. We're going to show you examples and give you some examples of content that should be in it. And then take 5 pages from this one and 10 pages from this one and rebrand it to your personal brand or to your team and create your own. But the bulk of the content that should be in it is already done for you, which is pretty cool. So, right, a buyer calls and says, hey, me and my partner are thinking about buying a house. Can you help us out? Right? Where do you go from there? Where do you start? Right? It's now going to be more common practice, I believe, to say, hey, that sounds great. Why don't you meet my office, or I'll meet you where you're living now, or let's go meet at a coffee shop and get to know each other. Right? I'd love to earn your business as your buyer's agent. And we'd love to figure out how we can work together to find you what you're looking for in your next home. Right, step number 1, understanding your audience. Everybody's business is slightly different. So who are the buyers that you want to work with? Right, do you want to work with first-time home buyers or veterans or people looking to upgrade their houses or downsize or relocation, lake buyers, farm buyers, whatever your audience is, right? You're gonna have to target your buyer presentation slightly different, right? Very similar on the seller side. You're not gonna be going with a luxury presentation to $150,000 fixer. This is the exact same thing on the buyer side. And so, what was that?
I wish I could, but I'm on a training.
Somebody grab you. Right. Number 1, right? Understanding your audience. This is critically important from the get-go because whoever you're meeting with, right, you need to tailor your presentation to what they're going to be looking for in a home. Right? What are their values, their motivations? How do they make decisions? Right? We've all worked with buyers who walk into a house and go, yeah, this one looks good, I'll take it. Right? Let's write an offer. And we've also worked with buyers on the other end of the spectrum, right? Who look at every nook and cranny of a house and want to analyze every single detail. What are the average utilities? What are taxes? How is this going to, are there any school referendums coming up? Right? Like the super analytical type. Understanding, right, the mindset of your buyers is going to be important, right? As you tailor your presentation to them. And then this, right? What's your compelling introduction? What is your 30-second elevator pitch on why buyers should choose to work with you? Right? What are your buyer agency stats? How long have you been in the business? What is your kind of claim to fame that you can get that you want to pitch to buyers for why they should choose to work with you on the buyer side. In one of our trainings a couple weeks ago, we talked about confidence, right? What if somebody says, why should I work with you? Can you tell me confidently in 30 seconds why you should? Right? If not, really work on the scripting and the dialogue, which we're gonna do next week with Tim, to get your kind of elevator pitch ready to go.
She's not in there now.
So, right, you got the appointment.
Oh.
You're gonna sit down with, your buyer, the couple of buyers you're gonna work with.
She's in the meeting.
And what's the first thing you say, right? What do you wanna buy? Right, understand their needs and wants. I have one, you guys might have them too, but like buyer needs worksheets. When you sit down with them and you say, tell me, Amy, what are you looking for in a house? Well, I need 3 bedrooms, 2 baths would be nice, 1,500 square feet plus, blah, 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 right? You need to kind of commit that stuff to memory because you guys are the experts. You're the real estate agents. You're the ones that know the market and know the inventory that's already out there before the buyer does, right? So the more you can understand what they need and want, the better you can deliver them the inventory of the properties that they, might be most eligible to buy. What are their key drivers? Budget constraints, lifestyle preferences, and must-have home features. We're gonna talk about the budget constraint one here in a little bit more. But again, in light of the settlement, what does it mean for buyers if a seller is not offering buyer agent compensation? How do you have that conversation? We'll get into that a lot next week with the scripting and dialogue and the role play that we're gonna do. Because that's a really key piece to all of this for you guys to understand and be able to confidently and efficiently and effectively communicate to your buyer clients. But if they say, yep, I've been pre-approved up to 250,000. Great, that sounds good. How much of your down payment do you have? Do you have an extra 3% if you have to pay my buyer agency fee? Do you know what your closing costs are? All of these things are in the grander scheme of things, right? A lot of buyers, and I think in a lot of our experiences, think, I'm gonna buy a $250,000 house and I've got, $10,000 to put down and that's that. But as we know, in our experience, right, it's more involved than that. And there are fees that a lot of times the buyers don't understand that they're gonna have to pay, now including potentially paying your buyer agency commission. This is another thing that should be in your buyer presentation, right? Market trends and what they mean. A lot of buyers, whether it's their first house or their 10th house, don't understand a lot of the process like we do, right? This stuff is like, oh yeah, obviously I know what interest rates mean or earnest money or, what's going on in the market, right? We do this every single day, day in and day out, but to a lot of people, real estate is a totally different kind of foreign language. And so as you're sitting down with buyers, right, explain what supply and demand is. Explain how interest rates are going to affect their monthly payment. Talk about inventory, talk about median home prices, right? The general consumer is listening to the national news media going, oh, it's a terrible time to buy houses. Interest rates are so high, right? Yeah, they're high compared to 3 years ago when they were 3%, but they're low compared to 20 years ago when they were 15%. And so people are listening to their uncle at Thanksgiving or what's happening on the news, but they don't really understand what it means if they're buying a house here in Dane County or in Sauk County or in South Central Wisconsin. Explain to them, right? Okay, there's very few houses under 300,000 for sale in Baraboo. So we've got 19 showings on a listing that hit the market this week. What does that mean for you as a buyer, right? You're going to have to be competitive. Or maybe you're $1 million buyer and there's 50 houses spread across Madison. Okay, you can be a little more selective on what you want, but right now we're tailoring our presentation based on the buyer who's sitting in front of us. Explain, right, with interest rates. What does 1% of interest rate fluctuation mean to their monthly payment? Is it better to buy down your rate with some of the money that you had saved up for your down payment? Or should you put more money down? How does that affect your monthly payment? Right? And then talk about the market. You're the expert here. You know what's going on in the communities that you're serving and you're working in. Explain how, right, we're expecting as we move into the summer market, more houses to hit the market. That's going to move up inventory, supply, and demand, right? It's all just business. This one is huge, right? Again, whether they bought 1 house or 20 houses, what does the process look like? Okay, we found what you want, where you're looking, what's important to you in a home. Let's go find it. Here's what's going to happen next, right? We're gonna go on a bunch of showings. I'm gonna set you up in the MLS or on a KB4 or Lofty. You're gonna get a bunch of emails about matching properties. You wanna go look at them, we can go to open houses, blah, 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 right? All the stuff that we think is obvious could be kind of foreign to buyers, right?
Did you make these slides?
Yeah, I'll share them out with you guys.
Can you edit them?
Yeah. But right, we're gonna start with our home search. We're gonna go look at a bunch of properties, right? I always tell buyers, even if you don't think this is the right property for you, it's good to look at homes as you're trying to figure out what you wanna buy. Because you might realize, oh, actually, I do like the forest. I don't know why I ruled that out in the beginning. Or we could probably get away with 1.5 bathrooms as long as there's enough bedrooms for the kids. Right? The more they look at houses, the more they realize what actually is important to them, or what they're willing to concede in stuff that they thought were must-haves. Right? All right, now we've got our accepted offer. That's awesome. You're gonna move into the financing stage. Who are you working with? How much money do you have down, right? Again, the financing process of this, buyers will say, oh, I saved a bunch of money for down payment. Great, but right, again, it's more involved than that. And so what does the financing section look like? Again, you don't have to be an expert here, but this is where we partner with a really good lender to make sure that the clients that we're serving at a high level on the real estate side are also being serviced at a really high level on the lending side. What happens right after offers and negotiations and the inspection and appraisal? There's a lot of unknown for buyers here, right? What happens next? I don't know. Okay, cool, I found the house I want to buy. I've got to wait 30 days, 45 days, 10 days, you know, what do we need to do step by step? Again, it's stuff we move through these transactions every single month, but to buyers who do this once on average every 8 years, there's a lot of unknown in this section of the transaction. And then closing, right? This is when they need to bring their money to the closing table and they get the keys. What does that process look like? Make sure buyers understand this entire process from start to finish so that no surprises come up. So you're not 15 days into a transaction and the buyer calls you and goes, oh my God, I didn't know I needed $5,000 in closing costs. I don't have that kind of money, right? The more surprises you can avoid, the better it's going to be for everybody throughout. And this is what I was talking about, right? Explain the mortgage financing process. Are they pre-approved, and are they pre-approved with the lender that you already know, like, and trust? We've all worked with buyers who are, and I don't know if I should legally say this, but I'll keep it general, right? Working with an online lender and the processors in Phoenix and their lenders in Dallas, and you can't get a hold of anybody, but they're pre-approved and it's a nightmare, right? How can you help your buyers understand the reputation of local lenders or lenders that you already work with or know or trust, right? The benefit of working with somebody like that. And really what a pre-approval process looks like. What do they need? They need 2 years of tax documents, bank statements, check stubs, right? Get them partnered up with somebody who can help them through the pre-approval process because it makes everything else easier, right? What are their different loan options? Again, buyers have no idea. I met with a buyer the other day who was like, I've been saving money up for 5 years and trying to get 20% down. And he had well over 10% already saved for the kind of house that he's gonna go buy. He had no idea. He thought, I'm gonna save money until I got 20% because I cannot buy a house until I have 20% down. Right? We all know that's not true. There's tons of options. He's a single guy, first time home buyer and a vet. So many options for this guy, right? He had no idea. Again, right, how do interest rates impact your monthly payment or your finances? And what closing costs are? How much are they? How much money do you need to save on top of them? Again, this is a big unknown for a lot of people. And so, again, I don't expect you guys to be experts on the lending process, but you should know this at a high enough level that you can explain it at, to your clients, and then again, partner them with somebody who is important. Right, same thing, highlight your lender recommendations. This is really similar again, right? When we go into a listing presentation with sellers and the seller goes, yeah, I think we need to put new flooring in before we list. And you go, great, I've got a really great contact at the local flooring center, right? This is highlighting your network and your expertise of people that you want to work with and that you want your clients to work with. It's giving them access to the network of people people that you've built relationships with. Beth and I just talked about this yesterday. You know, she's got a seller and a buyer she's working with, and she gave them a whole list of lenders and contractors and people, right? This isn't just a Google search that Beth printed off. These are relationships that she's built. It's why she's worthy of being paid 3%, right? She's been in the business 30 years. She's built these relationships. People want to work with Beth and she wants to work with them because she knows that they're going to serve her clients at the same level as she does. Right? Talk about competitive rates. You're not going to pay the exact same thing with any lender you go to. So understanding, right, what closing costs look like with the mortgage broker, with a credit union, with a local bank, or, you know, one of the national franchises. Again, this is a place for you guys to show your expertise, to show your reputation in the market. And then this is a big one, right? Address the buyer's concerns. A lot of buyers go into the home buying process, they're super amped up, they're really excited, but they're also scared to death, right? It's probably one of the biggest purchases that they're going to make in their lifetime. And so how can you alleviate their fears, right? How can you talk about market volatility, bidding wars, hidden costs? Again, how can you mediate or mitigate, that's the right word, mitigate any surprises or things that could pop up before they happen? Again, it establishes you as the expert in the process. This one is huge too, manage expectations. What is this actually going to look like? You don't need to paint everything as daisies and roses because, as we all know, the last few years it has been like the Wild West in the real estate market. Your buyers need to understand, hey, you may lose out on multiple homes before we find you the right one. But I need you to trust in the process, trust in our relationship, keep fighting, keep going after what you want, and you will get it done eventually. You might have to pay over asking price. You might have to, you know, get creative in your offer process. What is this going to look like? What's the timeline? And what potential challenges might we face along the way, right? If the buyer already knows, hey, these things might happen, if and when they pop up, it's going to be a lot easier to work through than if they were just totally blindsided by it. Same thing, how are you writing offers? How are you writing competitive offers for your buyers so that they get accepted? If you've ever been on the listing side, right, you know that every agent writes an offer slightly different and some way better than others. So how are you showing your expertise in offer writing so that you can put your buyer in the best position possible for them to get the accepted offer? And that's where you highlight your expertise, right? I've done this, you know, I've been in the business 10 years or 20 years or 5 years. I, you know, successfully sold 18 homes to buyers last year. We're competitive every single time, right? Whole stats here, you know, on the listing side, you can say my average listing days on market is 15, right? Start to aggregate the data on the buyer side as well to show your success as a buyer's agent. Again, I really think, and Tim and I talk about this often, with the settlement and you know, the buyer agency coming to light and buyers having to sign buyer agency with agents, there's going to be such a higher importance on successful agents on the buyer side, right? It's really easy for buyers to go online right now, look up a house, click schedule a showing, and show up with somebody in the driveway. But again, as a lot of us know, there's some really great agents in the marketplace right now, and there's some ones that struggle a little bit.
Hey, Reagan, we had a comment online. It's more of a comment than a question, but it was, I think it was great. As we're going through each one of these, it's important to share a story. So like what you just said, not only highlight, hey, how many years have I been doing this and do I know how? Share specific stories of success in these different categories. Have a story in mind in your presentation so you're not grasping for it. But what was that story? How did it work out? And why did your expertise or why did your, you know, getting through that experience help your client? And how is that going to help them?
Yeah, that's a great point. And then at the end of this, right, you have to be confident enough to ask for the buyer's business. Again, when you're at a listing presentation, you often say to the sellers, you know, what 2 or 3 things need to be a 10 out of 10 for me to earn your business today, right? Or, you know, sign here on the dotted line, however you want to say it to your client. But at the end of your buyer presentation, right, you're asking for their loyalty. You're asking for them to trust you in the process and only you, right? Buyers sometimes get a little wonky, right? You find out they're talking to 4 or 5 different agents at the same time because they don't understand the process, right? Ask for their business, ask them to trust you, ask them to enter into an exclusive buyer agency with you and sign the form, right? This is important. So many people are afraid of being told no, that they just don't ask for the business, which in turn is a no anyways, right? They lose the chance for a yes. And so having your buyer presentation dialed in, focused, ready for the client, this is gonna be a yes more times than not, right? Don't give them an excuse for why they shouldn't hire you. Make them so excited to hire you that they're willing to sign right away. Any questions on the step-by-step process or things that you should add to your buyer presentation? No? Sweet. We're gonna show you a few examples of different home buyer guides. So this one is a RE/MAX home buyer's guide that RE/MAX came out with. You can find it on the marketing tab in Max Center. Again, both of these are really long. I don't think, I mean, if you're anything like me, you probably don't have an attention span more than like 30 minutes. And so showing up with a 45-page document in front of buyers is probably gonna overwhelm them more than it's gonna do good. But again, the content is here. So take pages from this, take paragraphs from this, take ideas from this, for both of these really, and compile them into something that's branded to you and your business. But again, obviously RE/MAX made this one, so it's very heavily RE/MAX branded. But it's right talking about why you should work with a RE/MAX agent. 10 steps to purchasing a home, right? This is kind of what we talked about, making sure that they understand the process. What does this look like? Choosing an agent that's right for you, knowing your budget, exploring mortgage options, making an offer, getting an inspection, closing the deal, all of that, right? Let your agent be your guide. Guys, this is great, right? Here are 10 questions you should ask an agent that you're interviewing. You should know an answer for your business to every single one of these questions, right? You're just setting yourself up for a home run. Send this to them ahead of time and they come in and they go, all right, cool. Tim, what services and resources do you offer? Oh, thanks so much for asking. Let me tell you about it. Right? What happens after we make an offer? What about after closing? Jared James said the other day, right? You can get pregnant by anybody, but who's going to help you raise the kid for 18 years? Little inappropriate, very on brand for Jared, but same thing here, right? Who you work with as a buyer's agent matters because we know that the transaction doesn't end at the closing table. This is a good one. How many homes have you helped customers buy in the last year? These are the stats that you need to know about your own business. Getting pre-approved, right? What does that mean? How do we start your home search? Here's different home styles, right? Again, buyers say, I need a 3-bed, 2-bath house. Okay, cool. Do you want a 2-story? Do you want a ranch? Do you want a split level? Are you looking for something rural? Do you want a condo so you don't have any maintenance? Right? Lots of different options in houses. Here's kind of that buyer worksheet that I was talking about before, a checklist, right? That you're working through. How many bedrooms do you want? Do you need a garage? What kind of kitchen features are you looking for? Getting prepared, right? I thought this was awesome.
Hey, Reagan.
Home buyers.
Reagan, we had one quick question on the stats side of things too, which I think was kind of critical. You know, if you don't, people are like, well, what if your stats aren't as good as they have been in the past? You know, the market, this, that, and the other. I guess the answer, the comment I will give there is, isn't that why you're with this team? Isn't that why you're with this group of people? Use your office stats, use your brand stats, use whatever that you can, that you have access to. You're networking with these people on a daily basis. Use that power.
Definitely. Yeah. And to that question, to that point, right? We've all seen the agents who post on Facebook, like, #1 buyer's agent in the, greater Madison area. And you're like, no, you're not. You sold like 3 houses last year. And then you look at the fine print and it's like, For buyers above 52.5 and below 53 who have black hair and wear blue jeans every single day. Okay, maybe, right? There's ways that you can work your statistics or work, find the statistic to back it up. It's to make your point, right? I'm not saying falsify numbers or anything, but you can highlight your expertise in a strategic way that gets your point across. This home buyer's glossary I thought was cool. Again, it's really long, but it's common terms that we can talk about in our sleep that buyers have no idea about, right? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? What is an amortization schedule? I have no idea, right? Give them this so that they have access to it. This is customizable to, if you go on the Remax marketing tile, you can put your name and your picture in here and print it off. So this is one version. And then another version that Ann and Richard have worked really hard to put together. You can find it in the resources drive under Canvas templates. There's a buyer's guide and a seller's guide. Again, this one is really thorough and put together well. Take what you want, put your own picture here, put your name there, right? Take pieces from it that you want, and leave out stuff that you think maybe isn't as important to your ideal market. Right, here's an introduction. This is your kind of compelling call to action. Why you should work with us. Why buyer agency? This is huge, right? There's a lot of buyers out there that think I can do something. I'm just gonna go to the listing agent, or I'm gonna have an attorney draft it up and I'm gonna save 3%. I'm gonna save myself a lot of money. Right? We're paid for a reason because we do a job. Putting this in here too, right? What do you do as their buyer's agent? Right? Again, here's the home buying process. What this looks like for you. Cost to consider. Again, you're not just buying a $300,000 house with 10% down. You've got to put down earnest money, you've got closing costs, you've got inspection costs, your appraisal is going to cost money. What does that look like comprehensively throughout the process so that the buyer knows exactly how much money that they need to have? Financing, right? They're going to pull your credit. Here's a document checklist of things that your mortgage lender is probably going to need from you. This is very awesome.
If I click this, then you'll get me back here. If I click on this.
Wow, and I knew you came out of your office for a reason. Thank you so much.
Engineers already. You can also use the little Zoom bar on the bottom where it says the percentage. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Do's and don'ts, right? I showed up to a closing one time, I had a listing. The buyer showed up in a brand new truck and got married 2 days before. Nightmare, right? Here are things that you should and should not do during the transaction process. Don't change jobs, don't go buy a new truck, don't get married. Right, we're gonna change a lot of things here, but you can just hang on for 30 days. Here's the best way we can spend those 30 days.
Did you get mad or cry first?
I think everybody at the closing table was like, you did what? So 30 days later, we were all right, very good. Right, different loan types. We talked about this too, right? Non-traditional loans, not a bad thing, right? But FHA, VA, USDA, what kind of down payment assistance programs are there for first-time home buyers? What does a conventional loan look like, right? You don't have to have 20% down anymore. You can do a conventional loan with 3%. What does that look like for your buyers? Right? Getting them pre-approved. Step 3, choosing the right agent. Again, you're not saying, here's what you should hire me. You're saying, hey, here are the things that you should look for in an experienced and successful real estate agent. Hey, turns out I'm all of those things, right? You're still giving the buyer a choice, which psychologically makes them think that they have a choice, but really you're going to be the only option at the end of your presentation. And here you go. 7 reasons to hire me. Again, this is where you can put some of your stats.
And if you're worried too, on the stats side, just from my personal opinion, you know, like those 7 reasons to hire me, guys, every single person that's watching this right now should have a different 7. And the reason
Right.
is there is something unique about you, your background, your knowledge, your experience, but then also if you're struggling there, that's where you can go to some of the other presentations that we're going to show and we're going to send links to. But you know, one thing that we talked about just the other day with somebody who's like, well, what makes me so different? Use your Remax versus the industry for just our website, for instance. Well, for one thing, Mr. Buyer, if you go search for properties, you see a lot of websites come up, right? You know, like we use these websites and we drive more traffic, that kind of stuff. And I know that's going more towards the listing side of the house, but just understand those 7 should be at least slightly different for all of you. And just put some heart into it.
Yeah, for sure. Right, now we're gonna start home shopping. What does that look like? What to bring, right? Bring me. I need to be there with you. Now we're gonna make an offer, right? What does that look like? What is the offer price? This is how much you're willing to pay for the home. Not what is it listed for, right? A house is worth what a buyer's willing to pay for it. You've got to put down an earnest money deposit. You maybe need to offer to close quickly if that's advantageous to the seller, right? Now we've submitted our offer, what happens next, right? The seller's going to accept, reject, or make a counter offer. If it's accepted, here's what happens next. You're gonna have a home inspection. What's the time frame? What's it cost? What are the possible outcomes? Here's everything an inspector is gonna look at. What's an appraisal, right? A lot of people think inspections and appraisals and assessments and all of that are all the same. But your lender is gonna arrange for an independent appraiser to provide an estimate of the value of the house. Pre-closing, right? Do you want a home warranty? The step's forgotten a lot of the time. You've got to get homeowner's insurance, review your documents, get your closing disclosure. We're gonna do a final walkthrough. Right? How many times have you sold a buyer a house where they look at it the first time you show them, you're in the house for 30 minutes and they don't see it until 2 hours before closing? Right? It happens a lot. Here's what closing day looks like, right? You've got to bring your driver's license. You got to bring your check for closing costs or figure out how to wire them. Who's going to be there? What does this look like? Right? Once papers are signed, closing is complete and you get the keys. Common buyer mistakes, right? Again, this is setting clear expectations, right? Shopping around before getting a pre-approval. Using up all your savings, not anticipating closing costs. The buyer understands this, right? When they see their final closing disclosure, what all the money they need to bring closing, right? They're gonna have it saved. They're not gonna have spent it. Right? Buying a home with a listing agent. This is a buyer presentation where at the end of this, you're going to ask them to sign a buyer agency. It's important to highlight, right? Why you should choose to work with me, why you need proper representation, and why you shouldn't just run to the listing agent and buy it. It's gonna be a big conversation that comes up next week as we're working through the scripting and dialogue. Frequently asked questions. Again, right, you guys are just teeing yourself up here to give them the right answer. Is it okay to have several agents working for me at the same time? Hell no, right? Can you show me houses that are not listed with Remax? Of course. If I drive by a home and like it, should I call you or should I call the agent listed on the sign? Right, these are questions, these are small things that buyers do every single day that make our jobs harder. If you can get the answer to them ahead of time, right, it's gonna smooth out the process for everybody. And then here are some testimonials, right? We give testimonials to sellers when we sit down in listing presentations. Same thing here on buyer presentations. Copy and paste, right? Actually put something in here. And make sure you use your own 5-star reviews in that. I don't know. Christine was kind of okay to work with. Took me a long time to find a house and it was fine. Right? Make yourself look awesome. This is your presentation. This is you asking for business. Right, here's my contact information. and a moving checklist.
How many pages is this?
36. Again, you don't include everything, but.
Well, and there's lots of title pages on this one because it is a very
There's like,
beautiful,
yeah.
it is a very beautiful presentation from that standpoint.
Take those out. Right, what does moving look like? Right, who do we need to notify that we're moving, right, the post office, your payroll, telephone and internet, garbage, your doctor, your dentist, all your magazine subscriptions if you're still getting those, right? What should be in the first box that you open in your new house? This is so helpful, right? Are you packing an extra roll of paper towel, toilet paper, and some hand towels? Because as you're moving, you're gonna have to go to the bathroom, right? You need some tools, kids' toys, if you got some kids, you gotta keep them busy, right? Coffee, tea, and snacks, chargers for phones and other devices. You don't wanna be at the, at bedtime the first day you move in and you can't find your phone charger anywhere, right? Pack this into a box. Not every agent's telling their clients this is something small and something easy, but something super helpful, and they'll go, oh my God, thank you so much, Cindy, we had everything we needed in our first box. Right, pack an overnight bag, same concept there, right? And then notes, it's where you guys chat together. This is where you ask for their business. What's it gonna take for you to sign a buyer agency with me today? I hope I've earned your trust, your loyalty, and I'd be excited to work with you. Any questions?
The only thing I wanted to add to all of this, because it has to do with any sort of presentation, and it's something that nobody told me about for several years until after I got into real estate for a while, was what is the experience going to be like giving this presentation? It's the same thing that somebody told me. It was really easy on the list, on the experience side of going and actually taking a buyer somewhere. Cindy, you saw like that, you and I did that tour one time, or you tour a buyer around the town a little bit because they're from out of town or they're a relo, something like that. What kind of an experience can you give them that has nothing to do with the presentation, nothing to do with everything else? I would make sure the car was clean. I made sure there was some, drinks in there, just like, like when you've gotten impressed by the best Uber that you've ever been picked up in, what kind of an experience can you provide then when you're giving a presentation? And if that means like, hey, when they come in for the presentation, you're making sure it's in a clean, awesome looking office, you bring them a cookie while they're sitting down or a coffee or something like that. What is the experience going to be when they see this presentation? I think is almost as valid and important as the presentation itself. If they're going to Zoom with you, is there a way that you can make that Zoom presentation of this a different experience? What kind of an experience can you make them have that's going to be memorable? Now you do all sorts of your awesome pop-by gifts and things like that. They're all unique. It makes something unique and it's not hard. If you're having trouble coming up with ideas on how to make something unique, ChatGPT is a wonderful, wonderful tool right now just for ideas.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Dan, right? There's a lot of agents in this industry and in our marketplace right now that are doing a very mediocre level of business. They might be doing a lot of business, but they're doing it at a very mediocre level. Be the agent who's willing to take the next step to make things 5% better, 10% better, to go that little bit extra step, and I guarantee you're gonna earn more business.
That was quick, 40 minutes. We've got time to sit and either work on presentations, help you with your presentation, whatever. Next week is the dialogue part, the part that everybody right now is itching to talk about right now. How do I talk about these new things? How do I talk about this or whatever? That's gonna be next week, Tuesday morning. It's gonna be just all about talking about this presentation. What is the dialogue? What are we saying to these people? How are we explaining it? Where are we explaining it? When? The whole 9 yards. But is there anything else for anybody else here? I knew I'll look online too upstairs real quick, but I don't think there was any questions.
I definitely think there's some parts of this presentation here that we can dissect and put into the follow-up. I like those to just kind of simplify things.
You just brought up something
Yeah.
so awesome. What's the timing on this?
Yeah.
From the time you get a buyer lead, what is your process? Are you sending them, hey, here's a note for us to book our buyer presentation. Here's my one page on why to even sit down to do this. Maybe you should have a single page reason on why to even sit down and look at a buyer's presentation. Well, because you should interview a good agent. They should be professional enough to spend that time with you and really explain the process to you without shoving a contract in your face right away. I'd be more than happy to do that in person or via Zoom. But then what is your process? Do they get an email right afterwards with that one page synopsis? Then when they're gonna meet you, are you using something like Calendly like I do that'll send out an email reminding them of when their meeting is, reminding them of some questions that they may wanna ask? What's the experience and in what order are they gonna get this stuff from you? I think is something worth thinking.
Yeah, and Natalie was going, right, this moving checklist could be great to send a week before closing.
Yeah, I was just noting right after appraisal,
Yeah,
that gets sent out.
exactly, right? They're not thinking about the first box they need to open or pack.
Which is so smart.
I know.
When I moved, I couldn't find pants, and I had to go to Walmart and buy some pants.
Exactly. See, and if you did it, right? Chances are everybody else is doing it.
I think in going through these presentations too, one of the things that stinks after you've been in the business for 20 years is you're like, God, would anybody really wanna see a page on this? And it's like, yeah, they don't have a clue. If you've been doing real estate for 20 years and you've sold a bunch of houses, you've helped a bunch of people move, you're like, doesn't everybody know this? And it's like, if they've never done it before or never even thought about doing it before, they don't know any of this stuff.
They don't wanna ask.
And so it actually is valuable to them, whereas normally it's not valuable, it doesn't feel as valuable to us.
Right.
Just remember, your audience changes, and when it's somebody who needs it, it's totally different than us telling each other, where it's like, yeah, that part's not all that important, everybody says that.
You're absolutely right, when she said they're afraid to ask, or they're embarrassed to ask.
That's right. So if we get it down to the most basic of basic levels, they actually do appreciate it. It's the same thing when, by the way, if this buyer is a relative or somebody that you already know is gonna work with you, and you don't go through this presentation process because they're automatically gonna do business with you, shame on us. Shame on us for not taking advantage of showing them really what you're all about and giving them the full money instead of saying, wow, they're loyal, I don't need to give them the presentation. They're still gonna be in the dark. You know, so I was definitely guilty of that on the listing side more often too. It's like, oh, my mom and dad aren't gonna, they're not gonna fire you, but you're also missing a great opportunity to still give them the full amount of value that you would give anybody else.
Where are we gonna find this again?
We'll send an email out to everybody that has both of these examples of home buyer guides, and I'll send out the slides, in a PowerPoint presentation format so that you can edit. Cool, or copy and paste from it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming today, you guys. I really appreciate it. Next week, make sure you're either here in Monona, in your team office. I think we're gonna have this together in Maryville. So that you're in a room with people that you can practice this with, right? It's gonna be far less, helpful to you if you're talking to a sharer.
So, guys,
And come willing to be vulnerable, right? We did role play in our soft office a few weeks ago, and people typically run from role play because it feels goofy and whatever, but you're among friends and family, so.
and it can be fun, but yeah, I was just gonna say, anybody watching online, we're not gonna Zoom that part. We'll Zoom the very, very first part of the class, and then we're gonna be shutting it off, because it is all gonna be us just practicing dialogue, having conversation. We are gonna be talking about, the NAR stuff and commissions and stuff like that, and how we're gonna explain and different strategies that are possibly gonna be needed versus ones that we know aren't gonna be needed. We know a lot more obviously now than we did a month and a half ago when all that stuff was new, so,
Yeah.
we're gonna do our best, but if you're online, you can certainly check the link down below and register for any one of the other 3 classes. They're the next 3 Tuesdays in a row. So after we get done with dialogue on buyer side, then we go to listing presentation, then we go to dialogues on listing side. So that'll be the next 3 Tuesdays.
Quick question. So I called you the other day about a situation where, like, if you're challenged by a listing agent, where to write offer presentation, like where should we write it?
That's a great Tim Kruger.
Tim?
Next question.
Hey, thanks for everybody that's online still. If there is no questions, I don't see any in the chat. You guys certainly can reach out. Yeah, the one-page comparison to what I will consider sending that right away. Nancy, I couldn't agree more. And certainly we can make up a little one-pager and put it out to everybody with the dialogue stuff next week. Any other questions? All right. Hopefully we'll see you all next Tuesday. And again, you can sign up in the link down below, or if you're RE/MAX preferred agent, of course, you guys can just join the links. Thanks so much. Have a good week.